Hey guys, Sean here. Welcome to the F1 Word and to the debrief for the 2019 Australian Grand Prix. It's a race that seems to have divided opinion in some ways, but in my view, it was a good race. Was it great? One of the best we've ever seen? No, it wasn't. But it was a good race compared to what we often see at Albert Park. And it was Valtteri Bottas who took the first win of the season with a fantastic drive, finishing 20 seconds up the road from teammate Lewis Hamilton. Max Verstappen was third for Red Bull with the two Ferraris. Not a good weekend for them, back in fourth and fifth place. Kevin Magnussen was in sixth, the only other driver on the lead lap, with Nico Hülkenberg seventh and Kimi Raikkonen in eighth. Lance Stroll brought it home in ninth place for Racing Point, and Daniel Kvyat took the last point for 10th. Pierre Gasly came home 11th for Red Bull, with Lando Norris in 12th for McLaren and Sergio Perez in the second Racing Point in 13th. Alexander Albon on his debut was 14th for Toro Rosso, with Antonio Giovinazzi down in 15th place for Alfa Romeo. Williams brought up the rear of the field with George Russell 16th on his debut and Robert Kubica coming home 17th on his return to Formula 1. And your three retirements from the race were Romain Grosjean, Daniel Ricciardo and Carlos Sainz. So then Valtteri Bottas took his first win since Abu Dhabi in 2017, and for me at least it was probably the drive of his career, certainly the best drive in a Mercedes. He got off the line well to breeze past his wheel-spinning teammate on the run-down to turn 1, and quite frankly that was pretty much it. He began pulling away instantly and dominated the whole afternoon. Understandably, he was delighted with his drive and straight after the race said, "I don't know what to say. It was definitely my best race ever. I don't know what happened. I felt so good and everything was under control. The car was so good today. So truly enjoyable. I need to enjoy today." As I said when I was going through the result there, he finished 20 seconds up the road from teammate Lewis Hamilton, who struggled for pace pretty much right from the off. But after the race, the team confirmed that they had discovered damage to his floor, and if you throw into that mix the fact that he had to make an early pit stop to cover Sebastian Vettel, that would account for some of his lack of pace, and the gap being the size that it was. But that should not take away from what Bottas achieved on Sunday. Yes, there are reasons why that gap was 20 seconds, but Valtteri was superb all afternoon and deserves every bit of the credit he is getting. Just quickly actually on that floor damage, Hamilton said it occurred on lap 4, but he wasn't sure where it came from, but suspected it may have come from running over debris that was left by Robert Kubica's damaged front wing. The world champion said, "I was quite easily keeping up with Valtteri. Then afterwards, I felt I was really struggling with the rear. From lap 4, that's when the damage occurred. I'm not sure where it came from because I didn't run wide anywhere." At time of recording, there's been no official word from Mercedes as to how that damage came about, but if anything does get announced at some point today, I will let you all know in the comment section and over on social media. Coming into 2019, one of the biggest question marks around the front end of the grid centred around Red Bull and Honda, and whether or not the Japanese manufacturer would be able to deliver a power unit capable of competing with Mercedes and Ferrari. And well, around Australia at least, they certainly did. Max Verstappen grabbed his first podium at Albert Park, and Honda's first anywhere since 2008. It was a really good drive by Max and he finished very close to Lewis Hamilton in the end, but never really looked like getting a move done to take second if I'm being completely honest. He did run wide at turn 1 late on in the race, but Verstappen denied that was the reason why he lost out on second place, instead blaming tyre overheating. It was unfortunate, but I don't think it would have changed the end result. To start the season on the podium and challenging the Mercedes car ahead is a very positive start for us. On the first tyres, as soon as you got within 1.5 seconds, the tyres overheated and I couldn't place an attack. As soon as I got onto the mediums, the car felt good, and as soon as I had the opportunity, I went for it. But Lewis had more pace than Seb, and at this track, it is so hard to overtake. As for his teammate though, not a great day. I do feel a little bit sorry for him because the team were the ones who messed up his qualifying by not sending him out again for Q1, so that's why he started so far down the grid in the first place. And also it is tough to overtake around Albert Park, but I expected him to at least make it to the points and was surprised he didn't manage to find a way past Daniel Kvyat. As is often the case, even though we're only one race into his Red Bull career, there are already some asking if he's under pressure. But in fairness to Christian Horner, he defended his driver, saying it was still early days and believed that the reason the Frenchman missed out on points was because he got caught up in a train of drivers who all had DRS, and that the Toro Rosso straight line speed was actually a surprise to them. As I said a moment ago, the lad is in his first race for Red Bull, so let's just see how things go over the next few races before we start jumping down his throat. All things considered though, a very good start to the season for Verstappen, Red Bull and Honda. And although Australia isn't really representative of any other track on the calendar, Red Bull do look as though they have the pace to be fighting Mercedes and Ferrari hard this season. As for Ferrari, well, a miserable weekend and in many ways it was a surprise. all the talk prior to the first race was that the Scuderia were the team to beat and that they had a significant advantage over Mercedes and Red Bull. However, that certainly wasn't the case. Sebastian Vettel and teammate Charles Leclerc crossed the line nearly a whole minute off the lead. Staggering. Team boss Mattia Binotto blamed a lack of balance, but was insistent that what we saw at the weekend was not the real potential of the car. Sebastian Vettel said for the second time over the weekend that he believes the car has gone backwards since winter testing, and when he was asked why he struggled during the race, the German said, "I guess we were just slow. I didn't have much chance to fight anyone, just a case of getting to the end. Not quite sure what the issue was." There was some talk during the race of an MG UK issue, but at time of recording, I've not seen any mention of that from Ferrari. It looks far more likely that the lack of pace came from issues with setup and balance, as alluded to by Binotto, but also by that early pit stop in a bid to try and undercut Lewis Hamilton. Therefore, obviously, Vettel's going to be struggling for grip towards the end of the race. There is some controversy about Charles Leclerc's 5th place. He struggled for pace early on in the Grand Prix, I think it's pretty fair to say, and made a mistake as well by running wide and cutting turn 1. Whilst we're on the subject of turn 1, Charles Leclerc actually got a really good start and was around the outside of Verstappen and challenged Vettel. However, there was almost contact between the two Ferraris, with the youngster running out of road and that put him back to 5th place. But the controversy was around team orders. Leclerc was catching Vettel quickly towards the end of the race and looked as though he could take 4th. However, Charles jumped onto team radio and asked the team if he should hold position, to which they replied, "Yes, back off to have some margin." People aren't happy, and for me, it is a little bit ridiculous because it is only the first race of the season. But neither car had the pace to challenge those ahead, so I kind of get it. And let's not kid ourselves, Ferrari are going to put all of their eggs in Vettel's basket for the championship, and so they were always going to make that call. As I've already said, a very poor weekend for Ferrari, but I fully expect that they will be much quicker in Bahrain. They need to be. That's the top 3 teams covered then, but what about the rest of the field? Well, down at Haas, it was a day of mixed emotions. A very good drive from Kevin Magnussen to bring his car home in 6th place and get the season off to a cracking start for the team. Well, on his end at least. But it was more disappointment for Romain Grosjean, as for the second year in a row, wheel issues hampered his Australian Grand Prix, as during the pit stop the mechanic struggled with his left front. After pulling over, Grosjean initially said over team radio that it was a suspension failure, but Gunther Steiner stated after the race that it was, quote, "Deja vu from last year on Roman's car it looks like, pit stop gone wrong." And he later told motorsport.com that the wheel nut broke and added again, quote, "It was on, but when you take it off and put it on, it gets damaged, and then the thread breaks." Disappointment from Grosjean's side of the garage, but I think the team will be fairly happy with the weekend. They've got some early points on the board, and for me at least, they look to be best of the rest, for now anyway. Renault are another team who will have mixed emotions, I'm sure. As I said in yesterday's race reaction stream, it was very much a typical Nico Hülkenberg drive, quick and consistent, and brought his car home in 7th place, some good early points. However, teammate Daniel Ricciardo had a miserable day. Off the line, he moved to the right to try and pass Sergio Perez, ended up on the grass, hit a gutter, and that ripped his front wing off. He did pit for repairs, but pending a safety car, his race was pretty much over, and the Aussie later pulled into the garage and retired. Some interesting words from Cyril Abiteboul after the race on Ricciardo, saying that the Aussie needs to develop a harder skin and more patience if he wants to be successful in the midfield battle. But just as interesting were Daniel Ricciardo's comments. He said that he felt underprepared for the weekend, stating that with all the media commitments around his home Grand Prix, he was, quote, "too busy pleasing everyone else." Kimi Raikkonen claimed 8th place on his first outing for Alfa Romeo, but it wasn't without incident. It's a bizarre one. The Finn removed a visor tear-off, and that ended up in the rear brakes causing temperature issues, which in turn forced an early pit stop. He was happy overall with the pace of the car, however said that despite it being easier to get close to the car in front, it was still tough to overtake. Antonio Giovinazzi had a difficult race after picking up damage on lap 1, which accounted for his lack of speed. He also looked to be struggling for grip towards the end of his first stint, but Gio was one of the reasons we got some good scrapping in that midfield, as he just fought hard to try and maintain his position. Okay, he finished 15th, but given the issues he had, I still think it was a very solid first race. If nothing else, he showed that he can fight hard. A bit of a mixed bag for Racing Point. Sergio Perez was one of the surprises in qualifying after making it into Q3 and starting P10. However, teammate Lance Stroll was one of the surprises in the race after making his way from 16th to 9th. Stroll ran long on his first stint, which enabled him to get the jump on a number of drivers, and fought hard in a bunch of cars from P7 to P11, who were separated by around 3 seconds come the end of the race. Very good start for Lance and Racing Point. As for Checo, well, he probably would have been in that scrap as well, but after pitting, he got caught up in that train of cars behind Giovinazzi, and that cost him a lot of time. Down at Toro Rosso, Daniel Kvyat managed to secure a point on his return to the grid, and quite frankly, I think he did a stellar job fighting off Pierre Gasly towards the end of the race. He was another driver that was part of that group I was just talking about, and could have ended up 9th but made a mistake whilst trying to overtake Stroll. The Russian went for it into turn 3, locked up and went straight on into the gravel. But still, 10th place is a solid return. Teammate Alexander Albon said he had mixed feelings following his debut. He actually had a good start to the race, making up a couple of positions off the line, but ended up getting involved in that fight with Giovinazzi, which cost him, but he was also overcut by the drivers behind. It was a somewhat disappointing day for McLaren. Lando Norris was the star of qualifying, with a lap good enough to see him start the race in P8. The rookie, though, said that he was disappointed with the race results, as he believed the car was good enough to score points, and said that a couple of mistakes from himself prevented him delivering any. But frankly, I don't think he's got anything to be disappointed about. Overall, a very good showing at his first Grand Prix. Carlos Sainz, on the other hand, described it as a weekend to forget following his retirement. Sainz, already on the back foot after getting held up in qualifying, pulled over early in the race with smoke pouring out of the back of his car, with the team saying that it was a suspected MG UK issue which caused the retirement. Hopefully they'll have a better weekend in Bahrain. And last up, it's Williams. Well, what can I say, really? As feared, they were cut adrift at the back, but the team's senior race engineer Dave Robson said that it was, quote, an achievement to bring 2 cars home. On his debut, George Russell drove well, all things considered anyway. I suppose did what he had to do, really, kept it clean and made it to the checkered flag. Not a lot he's going to be able to do in that car. As for Robert Kubica, it was a difficult weekend all in all. He made contact at the start with Gasly, which damaged his front wing, so an early pit stop was obviously required for repairs. And as if that wasn't bad enough, later in the race he lost one of his mirrors as well. However, although he didn't name any, Kubica did say that there were some positives for him and the team to take away from the weekend. It's a long season ahead for Williams. There are a couple of things I do just want to quickly mention before I finish. First off, the new point for fastest lap rule. It divided fans when it was announced, and I'll be honest, I was a little bit indifferent about it. Kind of felt like an unnecessary change. However, personally, I thought it ended up being quite a solid addition. I was also surprised how seriously the drivers seemed to take it. Hamilton wanted it, Verstappen wanted it. We were all asking on the watch along why Ferrari didn't go for it with Leclerc. And in the end, Bottas wanted 26 points and went for it. Just added a little bit of spice towards the end of the race. I liked it. The other thing is the new Aero Regs. Have they made a difference? Well, I think we do have to reserve judgment to a point, as it is always difficult to overtake around Albert Park, and for the 3 millionth time this weekend, it's not a representative track. The drivers were mixed in their views, which kind of reiterates that point, I guess. Raikkonen said he felt it was easier to follow more closely, but still difficult to overtake. Hamilton said it felt no different, and Verstappen added that it was still very hard, but the Dutchman did praise the more powerful DRS effect. Like I say, I think we just need to reserve judgment until we've had a couple more races. We will have a quick look at the championship tables, as pointless as it seems at this very early stage, but the top 10 obviously reflect the top 10 finishers in the Grand Prix, with Bottas top there on 26 points, the first time he's ever topped the Drivers' World Championship. And looking at the constructors, 8 out of 10 teams scored this weekend. What a start to the season. Mercedes with the maximum 44 points, 22 clear of Ferrari, Red Bull third on 15. Haas have got 8, Renault 6, Alfa Romeo 4, Racing Point 2, and Toro Rosso just the 1 point. That is it then for the Australian Grand Prix debrief, and in the comments section down below, let me know your thoughts on the first race of 2019. Did you enjoy the Grand Prix? What did you make of Bottas's drive? And who was your driver of the day? As I said yesterday, I just can't look beyond Valtteri Bottas, so he's my driver of the day. Now, I will be back later in the week with another video, and we will be live again this Sunday at 6 PM UK time for more F1 discussion. In the meantime, though, you can follow me over on social media. Links to Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and of course to Discord are all in the description down below. But as ever, thank you for watching. I've been Sean. This has been the F1 Word, and until next time, goodbye.